So, good morning, everyone. Thank you for your participation to the second Series Caps and Cakes webinar organized by Sapienza. I will start recording and I give the floor to Vice Rector for Architectural Heritage, Professor Carlo Bianchini, for an institutional greeting and for the introduction to the works. Please, Vice Rector.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Hi, everybody. I'm very glad to be here today to introduce this webinar for many reasons. First of all, because it's something that actually strictly belongs to the field of research I've been developing in the last 20 years. So it's dealing with architecture, with the cultural heritage, and also with the responsibility I have as a vice rector in the framework of Sapienza governance. The second is that it's, as you all know, Sapienza has, it's very stressing a lot the internalization activities and also initiatives. And the Civis network is, of course, one of the main instruments that Sapienza has sort of figured out together with many other universities around Europe. And in this framework, these webinars are a sort of preliminary approach to what is supposed to become in the next years a much sounder and effective exchange of people and ideas and experiences among all the participants to the network, and in perspective among other networks that are present in Europe these days and will be maybe made up in the future years. This is a portion, let's say, of what is the common research area in Europe, that it's as a cross-cutting instrument in which practically all fields of research and knowledge are developed, and with the aiming at increasing the content of knowledge in the European Union, European environment. So this webinar, it's a very small grain of sand, let's say, in a much wider complex of activities. And these days, it will deal with the cultural heritage. Cultural heritage, it's for Italy, of course. In the Italian culture, it's one of the mainstream research areas, but it's increasingly mean that in the last 20 years has become not only a research field all around Europe, but also an instrument for cultural and also social improvement in all around Europe. Cultural heritage is a part now of the well-being in terms of social and social, let's say, well-being, as well as health and many others. So, and it's also an instrument at political level, because many instruments designed by the European Union, the European Commission, were devoted to use cultural heritage and the research in this field for sharing and building a new culture all around Europe and between Europe and other partners outside Europe, like the southern shore of the Mediterranean area and the east part of Europe, for example. So many inputs, I would say, could be found out from this little grain of sand that will be presented today. So I don't want to steal any other time to what is the core of this presentation. So I thank you for the participation. I wish good luck to the presenters and reporters today, that are friends, young researchers and not so young researchers, but anyway, friends of mine. So they belong to my group of research. So I'm also proud about this. So I give the word back to Lorenzo for the further development of this session. Thank you, everybody.
I'm Professor Carlo Inglese. I'm of the Department of History, Representation, and Restoration of Architecture here in Sapienza. And first of all, I want to introduce the other two our friends. So if you want, to postdoc Martina Attenni and Marica Griffo, we listen later in the other part of our presentation, and they collaborate with our research group made up of me and Professor Carlo Bianchini and Alfonso Ippolito. And now I will do a first part of with a general consideration about cultural heritage and funding in European community. And after me, Martina and Marica will show you some our experience. And today I have the pleasure of showing you our presentation. The title is Basilicas Project, the cultural experience from documentation to fruition, and in which we present you the first results obtained in the definition of a system based on integrated models of the basilicas of Santa Maria in Trastevere, Santa Maria Maggiore, and San Pietro in Roma. Martina, excuse me, go on if you want. Thank you, Martina.
Scusate, a me non si vede.
No, go on.
We see the presentation, Martina.
I see the first slide for the,
Yeah.
for the introduction, but
We see it too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
It's good. Slide number 2. I like to start with this sentence from Xavier Greff. He's a professor emeritus in the Paris 1 Pantheon Sorbonne University. He told cultural heritage is considered a universal public good entitled to public funding, in which in this phrase we as a research group believe in a strongly way. Go on, Martina, please. Okay. In recent years, the European communities has increasingly pushed on the importance of cultural heritage. In fact, 2018 was celebrated as the European Year of Cultural Heritage. I want to remember you what cultural heritage means, as established by UNESCO 2020 at the 50th anniversary of the 1970 Convention. In cultural heritage, we can include, as you can see in this slide, material or tangible cultural heritage as mobile, paintings, sculptures, coins, manuscripts, and monuments, archaeological sites, underwater ruins and cities, and intangible or intangible cultural heritage, of course, as oral traditions, performing arts, rituals, or natural heritage as natural sites with cultural aspects such as cultural, physical, biological, or geological landscapes, and heritage in case of art. Go on, Martina, please. Furthermore, 27 member states of the European Union between 2014 and 2020 invest in around 256 million, a lot of money, in research and support for the digitization, very difficult word, of cultural heritage, mainly through the very well-known Horizon 2020 framework. In the 2019, we have the declaration, the very important declaration of cooperation on advancing digitization of cultural heritage. Very important declaration. Go on, Martina, please. In fact, on the 9th April 2019, 24 members of the European Union drew up guidelines, a series of guidelines after the serious, well-known damage to some cultural heritage in Europe, such as the fire of the Notre Dame that you can see, you can remember for sure, the fire of the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris on 15 April 2019, and the theft of the jewels of the Celestian Vault on 25th November in the Desdra Museum. Go on, Martina, please. The declaration of cooperation of the advancing digitization of cultural heritage encouraged to develop a common standard, methodologies and guidelines to model data and knowledge with the aim of a complete and holistic documentation of European cultural heritage assets in 3D. Go on, Martina. One example, one very important example that now I show you is this, the MIT Sensible City Lab and the Rio Washington's City Planning Commissioner with a portable LiDAR, a scanner, 3D scanner, to study the geometry of Roscigna in Rio de Janeiro in view of the Rio de Janeiro UNESCO UIA World Capital of Architecture. Go on, Martina. And after this general example, I present you some of our experience made between 2000 and 2021 in 3D massive data capture integrated digital model, such the survey of the Dome of Hagia Sophia in Istanbul or the Athena project, Euromed Heritage Fort between 2009 2013, in which we surveyed a series of ancient Roman theaters from European and North African countries overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, or the research work on behalf of third parties at the Borghese Gallery in Rome, still in progress. Go on, Martina, please. And starting from 2018, we started working on this important project that we called Basilicas Project, the cultural experience from documentation to fruition. This project is a project of in which we have communication of complex spaces like the basilicas. Starts from the survey. This is a methodology that we use everywhere in every time, and in which the synthesis of data and information in heterogeneous models is applied to particular needs. The fruition of architectural heritage is developed through different levels of information linked to integrated models that improve perception, accessibility, and use of space by different types of users. And now I leave the word to Martina, who present you the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore and Santa Maria in Trastevere in Rome. And after Martina, as I told you, Marica Griffo will present you our experience in Basilica of San Pietro. Okay, Martina, if you want.
Yes. So, generally speaking, the study of these three basilicas has the aim to document and disseminating the architectural heritage of these three important Roman monuments. And in particular, our objective concern an area that increasingly link the study of architectural heritage to the use of integrated digital model. And our objective can be summarized into these three objectives: the digital preservation and the dissemination of knowledge, the improvement of the accessibility to the architectural heritage, and the development of the management of the models. Then the study of three basilicas, as Professor Carlo Inglese told you, starts from the integrated survey activities. And first of all, this activity filled the documentation relating to the basilica studies. And an important thing that surprised us during our study is that is realizing that these three basilicas were not equipped with an updated survey, with an updated documentation, which currently allow us to archive some quantitative and qualitative feature that now responds to the current documentation needs that are now more and more specific and linked to a lot of themes. For example, the study of the state of conservation, the study of the material, or the study of construction phases. Here you can see some images of the 3D numerical model, the 3D point cloud, acquired from the 3D laser scanner and a drone. And it's important to know that the integration of different methodology allow us to have complete coverage as possible. In that case, in all our study, the laser scanner constitutes the metric base accompanied by a very low and controlled level of uncertainty. And then the data from 3D laser scanner was integrated with photogrammetry. On the one end, the drone made it possible to reach some inaccessible area, for example, the domes, which otherwise would be inaccessible. And on the other hand, the use of high resolution images made it possible to acquire detailed information related to, for example, color or material or state of conservation of the vertical surfaces or the rich flooring. Here you can see the complete 3D point cloud and some images derived from a drone. And here a view from the 3D point cloud, in particular a vertical section of the entire 3D point cloud. And here another other views of, for example, the attic part of the basilica. The survey activity is just a preparatory activity related to the next phase. In fact, the acquired data were processed into another type of model that we called 2D model that are necessary to summarize the main character of the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. But that's not all, because these 2D models are the basis to constitute the reference to all the maintenance and conservation activities that cultural heritage is subjected to in order to guarantee its protection. And in some cases, in this slide and in the following, you can see the main 2D model. And that 2D model allow us to study specific aspects related to the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. In some cases, the traditional 2D model are integrated with some data that comes from 3D laser scanner or photographic images. In fact, you can see an integrated representation that you can see here into this 2D model. In some cases, this elaboration allows us to study some specific aspects related to this basilica. For example, in this case, you can see the relationship between the basilica and its urban context, here expressed by the integration of 2D drawing as a vertical section and the images from the images of the view from Piazza Esquilino. And here, on the other end, you can see, for example, a cross-section made in correspondence with loggia that allow us to document the beautiful mosaic that are on the counter facade. Here, there is another example of specific study that is possible to conduct in this basilica. In particular, it is related to the marble used in the floor of the chapel. Here, the last type of study conducted on Santa Maria Maggiore that concern the documentation about what is not included in the church layout. In fact, in the lower part of the Santa Maria Maggiore site, there are the remains of an ancient Roman domus that now is just partially set up as an itinerary museum. And in the remain of Roman domus is now possible to see, for example, some traces of fresco with pattern documentation, or some traces of fresco of architectural decoration, or some traces of ancient flooring. but it's important to understand that all this model allow to summarize a lot of information to get knowledge about of this basilica. But however, this the documentation activity is also the first step of a process which reach the communication of architectural heritage to different type of users. And this is the starting point for the study of another basilica, the Basilica of Santa Maria in Trastevere. In that case, oddio, cosa mai? Scusate. In that case, the survey activities following a process similar to the previous basilica. In fact, we use always the integration of different methodology as 3D laser scanner and photogrammetry. And these activities were necessary to document the current state of the places, are necessary to update the documentation about the church that in some cases was incomplete, and for the construction of the integrated 2D or 3D model. But in that case, the documentation activity of the basilica involved a particular type of users. In particular, they are related to blind users or visually impaired users. And we realize that this kind of user can benefit from models in order to have a better perception, better knowledge, and better awareness of the space around them. In particular, our study increasing of the quality level of the space by improving the perceptive accessibility and facilitating the use of tactile itineraries, acoustic signals, for example, to indicate some direction, some tactile maps of the site written with braille text for blind users, and with some references maps for the visually impaired users. And our study is conducted in close collaboration with Sant'Alessio Center, always in Rome, which provided us useful information for the design of the elements, and in addition to the study of the regulatory references, and which validated our choice made regarding to, for example, the routes recommended to the users and the quality of the type of the design and model contained into the visio-tactile panel that we design. And here you can see, for example, a traditional integrated 2D model, for example, an elevation or a section or a plan, always derived from the integration of surveying activities that are, as in Santa Maria Maggiore, the basis to communicate the heritage of Santa Maria in Trastevere. And here you can see our project for the localization of visio-tactile panel. And here you can see the first type of visio-tactile panel. Generally speaking, all the type of visio-tactile panel are studied and designed to give to the user some different information like urban, architectural, and detailed information. And as you can see in the previous slide, there are located both in internal space of the church and also in the external space, in order to so in that way the visitors can learn as much as possible. This is, for example, the first type of visio-tactile panel, and it is designed to provide some information about the urban context of the basilica, and information about its location in the city of Rome and in relationship between other urban fabrics that are located in Trastevere district. For example, the first part of this panel shows the irregular position of Santa Maria in Trastevere Basilica. In fact, its position is unusual. It is located in a corner of the square between other important buildings, and its portico is aligned to the adjacent facade, while its counter facade is recessed compared to the others. So this is the first type of panel, and in this slide you can see the other type of panel designed the left panel in order to give to the user the information about the architectural space, and the panel in the left part of the image is designed to provide the detailed information to the user. The second type of panel contain, in fact, the description of the internal space of the Santa Maria in Trastevere Basilica with its three naves, and it's accompanied by a system of anthropometric proportion that could be more immediate for blind users or for visually impaired user, in order to compare it to a decimal metric system. And this panel contains also a lot of some information about the apsidal mosaic, while the last type of panel contains some information about the one of the chapel that is located into the Santa Maria in Trastevere Basilica. Here in this slide, you can see the prototype of one of these panels that is not only projected, but also realized and currently located in Santa Maria in Trastevere. You can see that the structure of tactile maps and the panels was made by a CNC milling machine and followed all the rules studies for the design of the panel layout. So establishing the formal feature is necessary in order to facilitate the comprehension of the content and the perception of the space of the users. And in this case, but also in the case of the other panel, it contains 2D relief model and 3D model produced by a prototype digital 360-degree 3D model that can be interactive, explored, also using a QR code in relief or and in braille, that link to an audio guide that provide information about the some historical and that provide historical information and some information about the space to the users. So this research, the research on Santa Maria in Trastevere and on Santa Maria Maggiore make it possible to understand some specific aspects of a complicated topic that is the results of deep analysis of the architectural element and architectural space, using different methods during the documentation phase and also in the phase that involves the dissemination and the communication of the knowledge regarding architectural aspects. Then the last case study, the study of Basilica and San Pietro, that will be introduced by Marica Griffo.
Thank you, Martina. And yes, we are now landing to the last case study here presented. It is the Basilica of St. Peter Basilica, on which we are we applied through the years different kind of analysis and different kind of studies. What I'm going to present now is kind of a journey which started in 2005, and it's not concluded yet. It's still in progress. We will see three different possible applications of how 3D digital techniques can help the dissemination and valorization of cultural heritage, and also how it can provide new information that can be helpful in different fields of research. Let's start from the first application, which was the study of the inner portion of the Dome of St. Peter. We are in 2005, and there was the necessity to understand a bit more of how was the structural situation of the dome. For this reason, the first step in order to reach a deep level of knowledge on the object was to make an integrated surface. The Dome of St. Peter is a ribbon vault, and what you see here is the analysis, the morphological analysis that was conducted on the sails and the ribs of the vault. You can see that in this case, we can have access in a 3D virtual environment to some very particular details in terms of decoration, color, and also shape and morphology of the object. When we deal with the 3D technologies, we are used to say that we generate a sort of virtual scaffolding. This is because we can access the 3D object, the 3D architecture from really unusual points of view. This makes it possible to look at the building, and in this case, to a masterpiece of architecture from a completely new point of view, to have and discover new elements on it. In this case, what you see is the 3D data capture, which came out with a three-dimensional point cloud of the dome. And then you see in the center of this image, the 3D mesh model. So mesh surfaces representing the shape and morphology of the object, while instead on the right part, you see also the chromatic aspects. One interesting thing to do when dealing with virtual model is that you can use the chromatic values which are embedded in our way of look at the buildings. You can see them detached from instead the morphological characteristics. This is incredibly important when the kind of analysis to be conducted are nearby the sphere of geometry, morphology, and also deformations related to the state of conservation, for example. The second application instead is kind of the newest one. This is going back to 2019. It's just before the COVID situation appeared. And in this case, our goal was to have a three-dimensional 3D model of the entire piazza nearby St. Peter. This was very important and interesting, mainly because since we are dealing with an architecture that has been designed thinking about geometry and how the geometry can influence the perception of a place, it was really important for us to get the main proportions of the piazza, but also the main geometries which underlie under the construction of it. So in here you can see few views of this building. We are skipping from a kind of analysis in which we have the possibility to access to an unusual point of view, to instead this application in which you see we have a space we are used to see because it is fully or almost fully accessible all the time. You see all these small dots that are representing people walking all around. But also in this case, the three-dimensional models allows us to make the very important step of transformation from the data capture phase, which has as a result a point cloud with a certain level of accuracy and a certain level of reliability, to the interpretation phase. What you see here in this slide is the 2D model derived from the data capture phase. This is exactly the passage from data to information. We can conceive the point cloud, the three-dimensional point cloud captured by thanks to LiDAR and 3D scanner technology, transformed into something which is not anymore objective, while instead depends of the reading capability of the person who is making who is designing and drawing the 2D model itself. In here you see, for example, the elevation of the basilica. The other interesting application of this specific example was, of course, the study of the plan of the piazza. This is because we wanted to understand how in the end, the design of the piazza was then followed during the construction, or if there were any modifications during the construction process. The other thing that is possible to discover thanks to massive data captures is, of course, how coherent has been the building through the time. So the thing is that sometimes on this kind of very huge buildings, the state of conservation and also later interventions do change the shape and so the language, let's say, of the object in a very interesting way. So in this case, we just wanted to understand how this element was changed through the centuries, starting from the designing phase until up to today, let's say. Other kind of 2D interpretations were instead related to the two elevations of the two sides of the piazza. In here, it's very interesting to understand how the choice of making this kind of vertical section was not just random, but was functional to the main objective of the study. In this case, well, we wanted to understand how much some perceptive attentions were made during the design phase and how these escamotages, let's say, affect the real perception of the 3D space. You see that the ending part of the piazza is sloped, is not horizontal. Of course, this helps let's say, leads the side of the user, of the tourist, or of the general, the person who is walking all around this piazza, to focus his or her own attention on the facade. So it's kind of trying to understand what are the reason and what is the concept that is hidden behind the realization of so huge and also wonderful design. While instead, let's move to the third application. Until now, we were talking about applications related to something which is built. Okay, so we have Santa Maria Maggiore, Santa Maria in Trastevere, and also St. Peter's. They are there. So we just went there to capture 3D point clouds and let's say interpret the data. This last application instead is kind of a bit different. This is the 3D virtual representation of the design that Antonio da Sangallo made for St. Peter's. This is a 3D virtual model, and also in this case, it comes out from a 3D massive data acquisition. But in this case, the object was not the built architecture itself, simply because this project was not realized, of course, while instead what was acquired, what was captured, was the wooden maquette that was made, and it's now stored inside the basilica. Well, after this data capture phase, we tried to interpret this information to get this 3D model. Of course, dealing with this so complex building and so complex design could not have been possible if not starting using studying the main elements which were assembled together in this design. For this reason, on your left, you see a kind of schedule in which all the main components that are composing the architectural language of this project were disassembled and represented in plan, prospection, elevation, and section. This was helpful and was needed because, of course, before starting a so complex modeling, we had to discover which were the modules, the main proportions, and which was also in this case the main concept that was behind this designing phase. This helps us to explore the possibility of 3D virtual environment in terms of giving a new perception of something that do not exist. So until now, we were looking at something which we can see with our own eyes. While in this case, the goal is to reproduce and give shape to something that is not existing. In here, you see some elevations of Sangallo project and also some perspective view. You see that also the level of detail is quite high because, of course, in this kind of representation, the complexity comes out only if every single element is modeled properly. In here, so after these three applications, let's say that we can define what is the basic transformation from data to information. As I was saying, when we talk about data, we can talk about 3D massive acquisition, 3D massive data capture. This can be performed with integrating different methodologies and different techniques. We have just now seen some of them, for example, photogrammetry, laser scanner, and so on. But still, the crucial changement is when those data are transformed into information. Well, both of them, data and information, they are merged together, integrated together to generate 2D and 3D models. Well, these 2D and 3D models, they are the core of our study because they allow different scholars and different specialists in different fields of research to approach the knowledge and to have as a basis both data coming from the data capture phase and information coming from other scholars and researchers. This is because in the end, the dissemination of knowledge is one of the main objectives of all this workflow. And this can help, of course, to the digital preservation of the object and to improve also the accessibility of the elements. We saw also on Santa Maria in Trastevere case study, but also with the 3D model of Sangallo design, how these virtual environments combined together can improve the accessibility to a wider public. Of course, last but not least, these 2D and 3D models are very helpful in also developing the management of the real building. So they can help in, let's say, taking care of our cultural heritage. Okay, thanks a lot for your attention. And thanks to the other speakers, of course, and presenters.